Hello and welcome to the Rogers Brief. I'm Adam Rogers. Thank you for watching and thank you for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy this content, and share it with others if you think they would enjoy it as well. I'm going to talk about Day 5 of the Mass Casualty Commission proceedings, which wrapped up early this afternoon. Plan had been to go for the full day, but there was a reason for that, which I'll get to, why it was wrapped up early. There was some confusion at the very beginning of the day about what the actual purpose of today's proceedings was. Now, I had listened to Chief Justice McDonald, Commissioner McDonald, talk about the purpose, which I understood it to be was going to be for the participants to give sort of their version of events or their critiques of the information that had been provided over the past 2 days by Commission Counsel in the first 3 foundational documents. Chief Justice McDonald had outlined that each of the participants would have an opportunity to identify any gaps and then propose any witnesses that they suggested would be valuable to fill in those gaps and provide the additional information. However, that's not what happened. It was Commission Counsel Emily Hill spoke first and said that the day was going to proceed differently, which was that they would talk about each potential witness that was going to be recommended or at least discussed, and then each lawyer who wanted to talk about that witness would get up, and then of course, so what ended up happening was that some lawyers got up multiple times. The first one that spoke was from Patterson Law, Sandra McCulloch, who did a really good job speaking on behalf of her clients, and those are most of the affected families. And she expressed their disappointment that the submissions were limited to speaking about individual witnesses. And the first witness that they were going to speak about was Lisa Banfield, the spouse of the gunman. She said that they do not endorse the foundational documents that have been disclosed so far, that have been made exhibits and released publicly. That in fact they received draft versions of these documents, and of the 3, 2 of them in the final version were double the length that they had received in draft, and 1 was cut in half. So certainly expressed some concerns there about the procedure that's been taking place. And it really kind of raised a question as to who is in charge from the commission side. I listened to Chief Justice McDonald say, here's how it was going to go. And my understanding was that it was going to be each of the parties that would have a chance to give their submissions on all of the information we've heard so far. But Commission Counsel saw it otherwise, and so it was done sort of witness by witness to some extent. So we'll see how that dynamic plays out as things continue, but it's certainly something to watch. Now, the first witness that was discussed was the one people would be familiar with, Miss Banfield, the spouse of the gunman. And while it seems obvious that she should be called, that there's valuable information for her to give, there is a dispute as to whether she will be. And the process, well, I'll talk about that a little bit. The process that has been determined to figure out if a witness will be called really gives that witness an advantage over the position a witness would normally find themselves in. So here, each lawyer had to get up and say, well, here are the questions, or here are the areas that I think weren't covered adequately by Ms. Banfield's statements, and she's given 4 statements to the police and the commission, to the police, sorry. And you identify these areas where you're going to want to examine somebody, and of course that gives them weeks, maybe months even, to prepare for those questions. And some of the things that were brought up, of course, the day of the 18th, we know now that Miss Banfield and the shooter went driving around to the area. They drove past the penitentiary, went into DeBert, drove past some of the later victims' houses. So lots to talk about there. And then overnight, she was in the woods for hours and hours through the night, according to her statements. but doesn't give much detail of any observations she may have made. And of course, she's in the middle of a very small community where there's been fires and shootings and all those. And she doesn't describe any of those in her statement. So lots of questions outstanding. So anyway, we'll see what happens with that. There was some, so Sandra McCulloch certainly recommended that Ms. Banfield be called and gave her reasons for that. Linda Hupman, who's from Birchall McDougall, supported that as well. Joshua Bryson from Chester Law, he gave the same submission. Tara Miller, who I know is as well because she's a lawyer on the Desmond inquiry, also representing the Desmond family, suggested, as in addition to Ms. Banfield, the two individuals that we know now were on a phone call, a video call with Miss Banfield and the killer on the night of the 18th, prior to him beginning his rampage. These are Angel Patterson and Sean Conlog, and they've been interviewed. They live in the United States, so there would be some issues about subpoena in them, but certainly they would be valuable witnesses to talk about, the day of the 18th, what they talked about, and that sort of thing. So there's lots more to come out, it would seem, to do with that part of the situation just before Wortman went on his rampage. So we'll see what the commission does with that. Now, opposing that notion or the suggestion that Ms. Banfield testify was a lawyer for a coalition of women's organizations, shelters and such. Anastasia Merrigan, who's a Newfoundland lawyer, says that there's been no major gaps in her evidence identified. I don't think most people would agree with that, but that's her submission. And maybe more importantly, that in her view, it sends the wrong message to victims of abuse that, if you come forth, you'll be, questioned, grilled, cross-examined, put in very difficult circumstances, and that can have the effect of discouraging people from coming forward. So, considering the trauma-informed lens of the Mass Casualty Commission, that's certainly something that they'll have to consider. The other side, the other one opposing it was Ms. Banfield herself through her counsel. Ms. Banfield is represented at the commission, and her lawyer, Craig Zeeh, Z-E-E-H, out of Toronto, said yes, she's given 4 lengthy statements already to the police, and in addition, she's facing her own legal jeopardy because she has her criminal trial, which is taking place starting at the end of this month and going until April 4th, as it's currently scheduled. So, and he suggested that if she didn't have that legal jeopardy, that she would cooperate fully with the commission. Perhaps trying to put public pressure on the Public Prosecution Office or the Justice Minister to do something about that. I don't think that's going to work. I think what will happen is the Commission will wait until after April 5th to have Ms. Banfield testify. Actually, when you look at the schedule, there's only a few days at the end of March where there's further proceedings scheduled, where there's even a witness listed, a space for witnesses listed on the schedule. But those are also days when other foundational documents are being presented, so it's not clear that witnesses from this portion of the events would be called during that time frame. It's not clear actually when witnesses might be called. So it may not be a difficult issue for the Commission to resolve. Just go by the schedule, go have her testify sometime after April 5th, soon after April 5th, when her trial is finished. The difficulty will be if that trial gets adjourned for any reason, what will have to happen then. The Commission will have to make a decision. But right now I think they can make a decision based on the known elements of the situation. So we'll see how that goes. The other major thing that came up today was the issue of police officers testifying, and that was what was supposed to take up the bulk of the afternoon. There's 17 officers, I think, below the level of staff sergeant, which are being represented by Natasha Najarwan from the who's representing the National Police Federation and their interest in this. So that's, like I say, any officer below the level of staff sergeant. And her suggestion on behalf of her clients is that none of these officers should be made to testify during the commission hearings, which was quite a startling thing to say in a way. I mean, they've been interviewed, but her suggestion was that, or her submission was that this is a trauma-informed commission inquiry, and that because of that consideration, that we should be considering the trauma as experienced by the first responders, by the police officers, and accordingly not force them to testify and re-traumatize themselves. To me, this would set an untenable precedent. If we can't have police officers testifying, then where are we? I mean, we have police officers, that's part of the job, is that they deal with these traumatic situations. As Mr. Bryson outlined, I mean, they're expected to investigate crimes of all levels of seriousness, the most serious things that they can, murders, assaults, sexual assaults, all these kinds of things, and testify about them. So if, we're to take a trauma-informed approach to that and say they don't have to testify, then where does that leave any investigation? So I cannot imagine the commission making a blanket ruling on that basis, but the issue of it being delayed today, so there's a proposed expert who's by the Federation, the National Police Federation. They're proposing that Nick Carleton, who's a professor at the University of Regina, be accepted by the commission as an expert witness that can speak about the trauma that is experienced by police officers in situations like this, and the impact that testifying would have on them. And so I think she's going to propose other ways of having them participate, or propose that they rely, or that the commission rely on their existing statements only. Now, we'll hear that expert first thing in the morning. He wasn't available today, so that's why the afternoon was adjourned. The commission, I think, determined that it would be best to hear this expert first as sort of a threshold issue or a blanket issue as to whether any of the officers would testify, and then hear about each of the individual 17 officers and determine whether any of them have valuable testimony that they need to provide. So we'll see how that goes tomorrow morning. To me, there's enough information now for the commissioners to make rulings on these two issues. Well, there'll be enough information after we hear from Mr. Carleton tomorrow morning. But I expect that there will be. I can't imagine, like I say, the commission making a blanket ruling that no police officers will testify. I think you would need to have an individual police officer provide evidence that they have some individual trauma that needs to be taken into account, and perhaps that would be addressed through other means by having them testify in another room or through closed circuit television or something else, but not to avoid their testimony entirely. All right, so those are the two major things that happened today. There were some other witnesses discussed by the parties that they want to have brought forth to the commission. Different members of the community that made different observations that council felt weren't properly captured by the foundational documents. We'll see how the commissioners deal with those. The commissioners didn't say when they were going to deal with these questions, so hopefully it's soon, but I know because, really this is going to solidify in many ways what it means for the commission to be trauma informed. How are they going to treat that term? What are they going to do with witnesses? It's been spoken about broadly and in different ways by different parties. Now this is a specific scenario that needs to be addressed, and so this will be a challenge for the commissioners. They probably won't give a decision tomorrow, but they might, and so we'll wait and see. So I'll be watching tomorrow and report back as to what happens with the issue of the police officers. You can follow me here on YouTube or with the podcast, or check me on Twitter at AdamRogersNS as well. So thank you for watching, and thank you for listening, and we will see you again next time.